Thank everybody coming to the meeting this morning, and anybody else online. Thank you for joining us. Like to call this Planning and Development Committee meeting to order at 9 a.m. November 15th. Of the agenda. Any late items? We do have Eli Walsh as a delegation. So I think Eli's got to be in Fernie today, so we're going to have him do a quick delegation first, and then we'll carry on with the meeting. So can I have a motion to amend the agenda and add Eli Walsh to a delegation? Deb, first. John, second. Thank you. Oh, I just also let you know Ian Bailey is away on holidays, and he wanted to attend the meeting today, but he's in the air, so he won't be able to attend. So there's three of us that we have a quorum. So yeah, adoption of the minutes, approval of the recommended that the minutes of the Planning and Development Committee meeting held on October 4th, 2023 be approved. John, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. All right, we'll move into Eli Walsh's delegation. He's our delegation for today, and Eli's looking at starting a business in town. So Eli, you can take the podium there and give us a little update on what your plans are.
So yeah, thanks for your guys' time today. Try not to take up too much, but I've been in town now for just a little almost 4 years. I moved here originally from Squamish, where I lived in the Windsor and Squamish area for the past 10 years. So I've seen the Windsor village develop, the creek, as well as the whole town in Squamish, mainly all through tourism. And they were quite small at that time, but I also have a background in custom home development. When I was 26 years old, I was buying properties and developing custom homes that fit that parcel. And a little bit more about my past is I'm also an ex-downhill mountain bike racer, professional free skier. I used to also own a sea-doo rental and guide business where we took clients up the river. So I have my Swiftwater resident completion, my small vessel operators proficiency, and as well, I'm the only motorized avalanche educator with both my American ARI and as well the Canadian Avalanche Association professional memberships. And so when I first moved out here, I sold my last house there in Squamish and bought a resort with the lease. We own 14 one-bedroom units on Key Cocker. And I kind of moved out here to kind of relax a little bit in life and enjoy it a little bit more. And so I started teaching avalanche just sort of as a part-time thing to do. And as that kind of played out that January of 2020, I started to design some parts. People knew that I wanted to do this and sort of were pushing me in that direction. As the pandemic hit, I started to, because I was locked in my house for the full day, 18 hours a day, I was working and developing parts. And I kind of met somebody who, what started as just a project for myself ended up turning into now today one of the more sought after brands in the industry when it comes to snowmobile customization cockpit controls. And so now I'm looking at furthering the business, and so I'm seeking some preferably C2 zone property in downtown or in the area here somewhere. And so I kind of just wanted to bring attention to the people here and just, put the word out that I am looking, and because it's not for sale today or not on the market doesn't mean maybe it's not available. And so I just wanted to kind of bring that attention to you people and just let you know a little bit about the brand and how much it could do for this community, be it if I was to keep the business here in town. I am going to be out of my rental unit. I've been operating this business out of a 2-bedroom rental unit for the past 3 years. And we recently, we do in excess of $500,000 just out of that 2-bedroom. I'm kind of bound by how much I can grow at this point, but I have been working as well out of the hard goods, aluminum and stuff like that, into soft goods and apparel. So we've been designing gloves as well as onesies, 2-piece boots, helmets, goggles, and the whole lineup. So I've been working quite hard over the past 3 years to develop this brand, and it's become quite big and it's well known worldwide now. I have currently over 30 dealerships in Western Canada, and we're looking to expand into the US, which means that we would need also a large warehouse to facilitate a lot of our product. And so the C2 zoning is preferred, although I do have a big vision. It can be downplayed in many grades depending on what property. If it's just C1, then I could also do the home-based business with a warehouse and maybe a storefront. But the bigger picture is to obtain a C2 piece of property where I could build an actual lodge that not only had a flagship store similar to that of, say, Patagonia or Terex, but as well would have a rental shop which facilitated all major brand snowmobiles. So we would have Arctic Cat, Polaris, and Skidoo, as well as Lynx available for rental. These sleds would be outfitted with our hard goods. So we would be the only rental company in the world providing customized cockpit snowmobile rentals. Something that would bring people from all over the world, especially because most rental companies rent one brand. And when you get together, you know, one person likes one brand and one's partial to another. So that doesn't always work, and it's hard for that group of individuals to rent sleds based on their personal preferences. And so with all this, I guess I just really wanted to bring to your guys' attention that I'm actively seeking for a piece of property to keep myself in town here. Be it C2, be it C1, or I may even take up a piece of ALR land and just build myself a base business and kind of chill back and relax. But if we were to go all out and do this C2 zoning and build this lodge with the rental company and the flagship store, we could be employing anywhere from 5 to 10 people on a full-time basis. While it is snowmobile based, it is a year-round based business because after the winter season finishes, we start production for the following season. As well, from there, it would have potential in the future to also do side-by-side tours in the summertime. And so we could have potential side-by-side tours running up Owls and Blue. Again, I do have some background in tenures, both secondary and primary. So I do have a bit of understanding there as well. So I guess that's kind of a little bit about my business and what I'd like to do. And I think it has a huge benefit to keeping a company like this in town. So I kind of ask all of you to have your ears out, and if anybody knows of anything, please let me know. Because I do need to find a place here by March. And so I am on a bit of a timeline. So if I can't find it here, I will be moving to Vernon, probably at Revelstoke. However, Revelstoke, I do have a dealership there that buys a substantial amount, so that would be a bit of a conflict of interest. I personally don't think that's why I'm here. Well, thanks everybody for your time. It's a little bit of a week, and hopefully together we can kind of, you know, look towards potentially building something to help the community here. And I just think it has a huge potential not only for the jobs, but as well as for the attraction of bringing people here. If I was to paint a vision, it would be to just imagine that a company like Climb or 509 was right here in Sicamous, and the attraction that it would bring not only within the snowmobile community, but as well potential down the road for motocross and summer activities. So.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Eli. Just 1 second, we'll just stay there and I'll ask some questions. Go ahead, Deb.
How big a property are you looking for?
The ideal parcel would probably be in around an acre.
Okay.
So I'm shooting anywhere from half acre to 2 acres. 2 acres, I mean, it's larger, and you know, it would just hold back the business a little bit as I had to put funds towards that sort of thing, but it also would have potential for the growth in the future.
Okay. Finished up? Yep. Okay. Sean, you got anything?
I don't have any questions for you. It sounds exciting to me. I welcome any businesses. That one sounds great, you know, opening up both seasons. I think you're shooting for a good goal here, and I'd really like to see it.
I appreciate that. And sorry, I actually was cut for time this morning. I meant to bring the magazine in, but we also have an article run this year in Mountain Sledder magazine. You can find it over at Askew's in the magazine section there. This was brought up by a company, one of my competitors actually, who owns Mountain Sledder magazine, MSD, who distributes CFR. So I was a little reluctant on what they're going to do for an article, but there's a 7-page article on that business. And then bring
Great. Thanks, Levi. Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, I know Kyber, you've been really busy building that business, and it's kind of a unique business, and Sycamoose is kind of unique where we have, we had C3 here in town at Old Town Bay, and Kevin ended up moving to Salmon Arm. His wife wanted to be in Salmon Arm for work, and they're now building a lot of parts and accessories in Salmon Arm, and they're looking at expanding. And they've, and then since then, Jamie Hodgkin, who owns the bottom part of Owlhead, just off to the right there. I think it was going to be a subdivision, Andy Zeeb's old property. Jamie owns that, and they also bought out Yeti. Yeti's a big snow bike company. So it's kind of, it's kind of really unique that we have them, we have them in the area, and yourself actually wanting to expand. And then we have Dave at Powder Lights. Dave is manufacturing high performance clutches that a lot of the manufacturers are using, and he's shipping them all over the world. And he's just basically right on, the frontage road.
Right there, Power Lights. He now has tap clutches. Tap clutches that actually is manufactured CNC machine at the same place as which my parts are.
Okay.
The fellow that does the machining for this, he's probably the best in all of Canada, if not North America. And really it shines with his, because that high performance clutch spinning at the rates they are, things like that. It really just shows the quality of the product. And that's really what's kind of separated our brand from everything else, is that we are the only A+ product on the market today. Everybody else subpar, things like that. So yeah, all the products are made right here locally in the area. Is another big thing. So that's kind of I would love to go towards for the same areas there. So
yeah,
if not be it here, I would probably be going that way just because.
Well, hopefully we can keep you here. And I imagine also the other point would be, if you wanted to do tours, you'd probably want to be over in the Owlhead area.
I would love to be on the east end of town there. I do know there's an acre parcel up there at the moment, sitting next to what was or is still H2O. Right on the other side of them that borders the ALR line there.
Yeah.
So I do know there is an acre there. Whether or not the fellow wants to park it or not is, but that specific area would be really beneficial to such a company.
Yeah.
The gas stations are right there. We're not bringing side by sides into town and stuff like that. We can run them on the street, and it's a nice small jaunt right into the Owlhead area.
Yeah.
So it really fit that. As well as it has highway frontage, which is pretty beneficial. So.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks very much, Eli. Really appreciate you coming to council, and I know you've been working with Carly, and hopefully we can find a spot for you, so everybody, keep the ears to the ground, and hopefully we can find you a spot and keep moving forward.
Excellent. Well, thanks again for everybody's time today.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right, moving right along, new business, development permit number 23-236 DP, development variance permit number 23-36 DVP 100 Archibald Street. Sir, do you want to take this away, please?
Thank you, Chair. Slide. So this is where that property is located, just off of White Pine Crescent along Archibald there. Designated commercial waterfront upland property, and the tenure area there is on the is within the channel development area. Zoned. Speak up a little bit. The upland property is zoned MUR1, which is a multifamily zone, and the water is zoned W2. Next slide. So they're in the process of renewing their tenure, which we're familiar with. Everybody along there has been having to do that. And part of that process, they've been required by the province to meet current best practices and guidelines. The whole dock will be replaced with through flow decking. There'll be stoppers put in to help reduce grounding. And it's also going to be extended a little further out into the channel to try to help with grounding. So in an effort to try to meet our zoning regulations, because they are right next to the Archibald road end there, and we do have a foot back there that's a little more significant, just to try to preserve public access through those kind of areas. So the marina itself kind of reconfigure the dock and how that comes off of the landing there. And to move it over as far as they can. So they're asking for a variance from 6 meters to 5 for the marina. And then there is a log boom there that protects it from debris during freshet that flows through the channel. And that they will need a 0 variance for, just because of where it attaches at the land there. And it does sort of move in a bit, but up at the land side there where it's connected, it does need a 0 meter variance. Next slide. So we do have a recommendation here today that the committee support this application through to council. So they do need a development permit, which is basically citing form and character in this instance, and the 2 variances. Chair.
Okay, well, I'll read the recommendation. Thank you, Sarah. I'll read the recommendation and then we'll go to discussion. That the Planning Development Committee recommend District of Sycamoose authorize the issuance of development permit number 23-236 DP for the property legal described as foreshore license number 339507, adjacent to the upland property legal described strata plan KAS 917 located at 100 Archibald Street for the replacement of a private moored structure and development variance permit number 23-236 DVP to vary section 4726 of the District of Sycamoose zoning bylaw 1000/2022 in support of a new lease renewal. May I have a motion to Deb, seconder, John? Okay, discussion? Deb or John, do you have anything? Pretty straightforward, isn't it? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carry on. Okay, great. Thanks, Craig and Susan. That was easy, eh? That's pretty, thank you very much. All right, moving right along. Next one on the list is temporary use application number 23-237, temporary use permit 517 Main Street. Sarah, this one's yours again.
Thank you, Chair.
Your little description.
So there is a recommendation here for the committee of positive one to council. Next slide. So this is where the subject property is located, and the area shown in the hatch is the area subject to the temporary use permit. Next slide. So it's designated within the town center as well as the gateway area. So that gateway area is that black dashed line that you can kind of see. It's zone C1, local and town center commercial. And that zone supports things like hotels, restaurants, laundry, laundromat, that type of thing. Next slide. So this one, some of the members of the committee were here last time this came, and you may be familiar with this temporary use permit. So this one was issued in 2021. If I remember correctly. So they're just coming back to 2022. It's only been a season for these guys, sorry. So they have come back with a few requests to kind of amend the conditions of that existing temporary use permit to try to make this work a little better for them. So they were impacted by the wildfire season. So last year was the first year that they had to actually establish this use. So this use is a campground with recreational vehicles only. They didn't want to have tents, for example. So this use is only for recreational vehicles, campers, that type of thing. So yeah, actually laying it out and putting it in place was impacted by the wildfire season. And it sounds like there were some other impacts as well, that in terms of getting permits, getting power, this type of thing. So this is what they've asked for. So they want to replace the site plan that's attached to the temporary use permit. There has been some slight changes. Overall layout is still the same, but there have been some changes to the servicing that's been made available to the larger RV sites. And then they've made those sites a little nicer as well. So there's now, it's not just gravel, there's turf in there, there's a removable concrete pad that the picnic table sits on, for example. Another change was defining what long-term accommodations meant. We've since had a request to remove that. We'll see how that goes. The other changes would be So limiting the use of the smaller sites, which is sites 1 to 5. Those ones are closest to the motel, to the months of April to October, so they wouldn't be used over the winter season, for example. But the larger sites, they would like to make those available year round, but with some differences in terms of servicing. So servicing in terms of water and sewer, they're now serviced with sewer as well, would only be available, you know, during the time period when it's basically safer to provide those, where they're not going to freeze. And then during the coldest parts of the year, power only. And the business plan with that has to be that offering those sites to sledders for their toy haulers. You know, they've got these big snowmobile trailers that they need to park. They've got, like, you know, space in there to do mechanical work. Some of them even include sleeping quarters. So they would like to make that available. So the initial ask was that they would be power only for guests of the motel, with the idea that, you know, the snowmobilers would be sleeping in the motel and it would just be their unit, so it would be parked there. But that request has also been updated a little bit. The applicant is here today, so if you want to ask them some questions. So the other changes would be clarifying the condition for decommissioning so that it speaks to the servicing that's there now, and just being a little clearer about some of the upgrades that were done that are common with the hotel and the laundromat. Like those saying that those changes can stay. They don't need to be taken out when the use is decommissioned. So this would be like the paved driveway connecting from Paradise into the site. What was the other ones? Oh, there's a shower available in the laundromat. So the laundromat will be a public business that anyone in town can go and wash their clothes, but then they would also have access to this shower and toilet, which is shared with people staying in the RVs. So the other changes would be provision of alternative screening from Main Street. So a couple of the trees that were retained as part of that, they were in poor condition, and so they've been lost. So they've come up with fence that matches some of the other fencing that they've put up there, if you're familiar with it. And the last one would be removing the condition in the previous one for a landscape security. So here's the updated site plan. So this shows the servicing. There were some complexities in terms of servicing the laundromat when it went in, just in terms of where sewer was coming from. It was coming from the 97A or Main Street, and there were issues with grade in terms of getting positive flow. So there were just some cost efficiencies there, and they decided to service the RV sites as well because they had to come past them all. And you might want to ask more questions about how that came about. But yeah, this would be the updated site plan that shows where the servicing is. And then these here just kind of shows what how the bigger sites, the bigger RV sites have been laid out. So those are the ones that are just off of Paradise. Smaller ones are sort of off Main Street, and those are more for like just smaller little campers kind of thing. Yeah, Steffi's showing the right ones. And the bigger ones, so if you walk down there, you can see the place. So there's turf, gravel for parking the RV, and then there's a engineered concrete pad that the picnic table sits on. Just cleans it up, makes it really nice. Here's some photos that I took. So image from Paradise Avenue, what it looks like, what the RV lots look like, and yeah. Next slide. So these are the requests since that came in on Monday. Remove the 14-day limit. So this is currently in the draft temporary use permit, the amendment permit that's attached to the agenda. So remove the 14-day limit and a request to remove the term snowmobile trailer. I guess there's some concerns because some toy haulers include an RV component. I didn't think that would affect that. So still overall, it's a snowmobile trailer. But anyway, and then we've got the comments here from internal referrals. I don't know if anybody needs me to read through them. I can if you like. So the building department did say that the laundry is under permit and it does indeed include a bathroom and shower, so that's why we included that in the TUP and make it clear that could stay. The bylaw officer responded saying that they haven't received any complaints since it's been up and running for the short period that it could since the wildfire. They do recommend that there's some conditions to ensure that there's no permanent residents in there. I guess there's some complications legally. Fire, they had some concerns about non-flammable fencing and fire smart landscaping, but otherwise no concerns. And engineering said that they're connected to existing services, so they didn't have to put in any new connections to facilitate the servicing of these sites. So it's all been serviced internally from existing stubs. And that's all for me. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I'll read the recommendation and then maybe we have the proponent in the gallery. So what we'll do is I'll just read the recommendation, then Rob could do a little presentation and then we can ask questions. Because if you were going to do a short presentation and we'll be able to, most of it will probably be in your presentation, so we won't have to ask you the questions after. So I'll read the recommendation that the District of Sicamous authorize and issue a temporary use permit number 23-337 TUP for Lot B, District Lot 497, KDYD Plan 19663, 517 Main Street to amend temporary use permit number 22-202 TUP, subject to the conditions of the permit. I have a mover, seconder John. Okay, what we'll do is we'll get Rob to do his quick presentation and we'll ask questions after. Thank you.
Thank you. I did put together a PowerPoint like I usually do. Sarah and I worked through this quite extensively over the last little while. I realized that with the temporary use permit that I just want to remind everybody that the council and the District of Sicamous holds the hammer of shutting this down after 3 years. And we felt that we got the wording wrong right from the start by handcuffing the use of the property for 5 months of the year. Essentially, it was a 15-month temporary use permit, 5 months a year for 3 years. When we started to put the park together, it was obvious that we wanted, and what you've seen, that we wanted this to be a very high-end executive RV site. We pushed our prices up quite high. That are now being announced on the website for next season. We targeted May 1st of 2024 for our opening. Before we finished construction, we were in demand for sites, and the whole town was, everybody scrambling for places to park RVs. We were looking at very expensive, very high-end clients, and basically urban campers that had a lot of wealth. And when we were putting the project together in regards to the sewer, one of the things that did happen was that we couldn't connect to Highway 97 as we proposed in our financial budget. We ended up having to connect to Main Street, running a 6-inch main. Some of you here were at our presentation for DP 2 years ago, where we showed a three-phase development strategy. The first phase being the temporary use permit for recreational vehicles, second phase being a building on Main Street, and third phase being replacing the temporary use vehicles, recreational vehicles, with 2 linear buildings off of Paradise Ave. In order to service those that long-term goal, we needed to connect a 6-inch sewer line to Main Street, and then downsize that to a 4-inch to the laundromat. The laundromat was the problem, in that instead of running 50 feet or 60 feet of sewer line, we were looking at up to 300 feet and additional $30,000 to $40,000 in costs. We made the decision to do that connection in order that in the future, when phase 2 on Main Street kicks in and any buildings on Paradise, that we have an existing infrastructure there. And while doing our deep trench servicing for the water, we decided that at the same time utilize the same trench and branch off for the 15 RV sites. The cost was minimal. It was to an existing infrastructure that we'd already set aside. Regarding the cedar fencing, it was one of the things that we had decided to go with, and we realized that everything we did was gonna be decommissioned. The power of the temporary use permit is in the decommissioning to back to normal state or back to the original state. We would never want to go back to the original state. As you know, that whole corner is transformed. Between the excellent work of Mr. Yarmaloy on the secret garden and the excellent work of Mr. Mohan, we now have a gateway to Sikaloosa that is something to be proud of, and we're just getting started. Landscaping is not complete. The real reason for standing in front and looking at the amendment, and again, I got to thank Sarah, you did an excellent job working through that. We were trying to figure out how to get the market going. The first problem was the length of the main season. If I can just read for you, this is from Carney. And Carney is it's an interesting little document with the tourism and economic development, as you all know. And she sent out an email that suggested that that we participate in a business survey here, because one of their focuses, and I'll read, this is her direct words, is starting to see an increase in visitation after the disastrous travel order on August 19th. After August 19th, we were getting RV, no RVs, because we didn't have that marketed, but we're getting cancellations on the motel. And she goes on further to say, I can start to share some preliminary events and activations we are working on to increase visitation during the Friday months of May, June, September, and October. 2 of those months aren't even allowed in our permit. We weren't allowed at Thanksgiving, we weren't allowed at Easter. So, I mean, it was nothing, it was an origination of a document. The temporary use permits, as you recall, just under 2 years ago, weren't even allowed in the downtown core. And we went through quite a process of changing that and changing the OCP. I think that this is just something I missed. I think that we all missed. And we just want to amend that now so that our full service RV work is available for 7 months and not 5, like the rest of the tourism. The power only situation came up when we were asked by a couple sledders out of Kelowna and a couple sledders out of Calgary if they could park their big trailers and have a nice 70-foot parking stall and have a 30-amp service breaker there that they could plug in. Also, we were approached by a fellow that has a contract that has books a motel room but wants to park his RV power only, so that he has his kitchen facilities and then his work clothes and all things like that. There was a couple things that opportunities that arose that didn't fit within our permit. So the year-round would be power only. We're not interested in having sewer and water connected. We're not interested in jeopardizing our deep trench water systems at all. And if a unit isn't able to winter, then it wouldn't fit into our strategy. The intent of the document from and some of the conditions was that we didn't have long-term people staying there. That we didn't end up with little sheds and target off as skirting and all kinds of a 10-town. But that wasn't our intention at all. This is executive RV. We need this to be high end. We need to. We can't be handcuffed in making income. You've got the ultimate hammer. In 2 years now, we have to stand up before everyone again and ask for an extension of 3 years. We're with the laundromat. We're probably in around $600,000 in improvements on that property, and to debt service that with not being able to have income from our RV sites is extremely problematic. And I know it's not your responsibility to help us figure a way to debt service. This is a business decision. But the business decision shouldn't be handcuffed as far as rentals. We understand the intention. We have no problems, like I said to Sarah, we have no problems with no long-term. And we have no problems with power only in the winter. So there's a series of things that we're asking there. And I think basically it's the evolution of a document. And this is the first temporary use permit in the downtown core. And we didn't get it quite right. So yeah, that's about all I've got to say. As you know, I could go on for quite some time, and I tend to. But yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing to allow Mr. Mohan the opportunity to show you what he can do.
Okay, thank you very much, Rob. Okay, Deb, you go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple things. So first off, I love what you guys are doing, and Rakesh has been a great partner with Communities in Bloom, and as a business person in Sycamoose also, you know, I understand that the debt servicing, you know, is a business decision, but you're dealing with that business decision because of how much you've done everything we've wanted to make everything look good. So, you know, I like to think, you know, we're kind of partners in this. I think you're right. I think, you know, the first attempt at the temporary use permit, yeah, we maybe just didn't get things right. In my mind, we want to have people downtown all the time. So I guess my only question would be about changing the existing limitations with less restrictive limitations. Like, do we even want to make, you know, like let people in 12 months a year, not long term. I realize there's all sorts of issues with that, but in terms of utilization of the site, like, is there a reason we're still being limited since that bit us once before?
I think that may be a staff question. Rob, did you want to comment?
I tend to agree. And, you know, when these documents started being produced and we started working as partners of business and you know, municipal authorities, we sometimes tend to overregulate. And the temporary use permit is already a strong regulation of control. And then to have conditional regulations, and you know, we don't have a crystal ball of what the market's going to be next year and who's going to show up. But to be, you're right. We tend to overregulate sometimes to the minutia, and that can be a mistake. You know, we need to give freedom, and we need to see, you know, adapt with the thing. The document is fine. I think that we did an excellent job in producing that, and it was tough to change the bylaws. But you're right, overregulation, and then maybe I wasn't going to say, but maybe over scrutinization on you know, the documents themselves. You know,
Okay.
we were called out on this 2 days after this. There was RVs everywhere, but that just happens, and I'm kind of glad that it came up. I'm kind of glad we get a chance to walk and talk through it, because we do get to change that. We'll get to change it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rob. Sarah, is there an issue with going year round on short term? Like, not, we shouldn't say short term, but can you elaborate on that?
For the chair. So what are you asking them? So currently, so they just wanted to do the bigger sites year round, the smaller ones they weren't going to offer. I think access, there isn't really great access to it. It'd be muddy in that. And then they weren't necessarily going to be offering water and sewer because it'll freeze anyway. So, I mean, certainly you can have a recommendation to maybe strike some of the wording from there that specifies that it's power only, and just leave it, shorten that condition so that it just says the sites are available year round. So if you want to make all the sites available year round and allow it to be a business decision on their part as to whether or not you can do that. You still might want to have something in there that talks about, you know, how long a stay a particular guest can stay, in terms of if you want to actively ensure that it doesn't become a residential use. Now, I know these guys are not, they're not interested in it becoming a residential use. They're very aware of the legalities of what can happen if you're a landlord.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's up to the committee to, you know, whatever you guys want to recommend.
Okay,
Update the permit to reflect that. It does need to be a clear recommendation though, so that those conditions are updated.
yeah. Okay, Rob, I had a question. Is your intent to blow out the irrigation, like when it starts to get, you know, late November? Okay.
It's deep trench and those are farm hydrants, so yard hydrants, so. We just intend to shut it off. We got the ability to shut off all the RV park at the laundromat.
Okay.
It's branched off from there, there's a manifold there. But those are the type of hydrants that you could turn back on and you could add power. So the question is, you know, to shut down the water system, we can do that, but we can open it up again quite easily. So we've given the client that opportunity to utilize that water.
Yeah. All right.
It'd be a regulation that we'd be, it'd be an in-house regulation that we would want to monitor. And like I say, as some of you know, when those hydrants are open, they can freeze right down to the valve. So they need to be shut.
Yeah.
And we're not interested in having somebody not pay their rent in February and freezing out and I mean, not interested in becoming a landlord.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're motelier and the RV park is a part of the motel. It's under the same regulations.
Okay. Great. Okay, Deb, you finished there?
Yeah, so we didn't get it right once. I just want to make sure we're not handcuffing ourselves too much again, so. And you know, like, I guess the one good thing is the time we've already spent. Is it gave Rakesh an opportunity to show us that he's a first-class operator, so.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
We just as a note, we did have someone approach and want to live there and Rakesh has asked them to leave because they weren't capable of having water on their own trailer and winterizing and surviving that. So it's hard to say who's going to show up and who's going to take those spots, and I don't think there's going to be many this year. But as we move in through next year, and as the sledders get to know us and realize that there's a 70-foot parking stall with a 30-amp breaker, I think next winter, not this winter, but next year, be very strong for us on that recreation, on the sledding trailers. We'll see.
Okay, John, do you have anything?
I agree with Deb on the whole removing as much of the handcuffs on that one as possible, because this is just a stepping stone in the grand scheme of your guys' plan for development of that property. And yeah, you're not gonna damage your own, that is your guys' choice as a business. You're not gonna purposely damage any of your own infrastructure that you've already paid to put in. So it makes sense to me to remove as much as possible. And because, like I said, it's not your end goal, what you're doing right now. You have a final goal. If we can help you guys achieve your final goal faster, we need to be aiding our businesses to grow, not hindering them.
Wouldn't be very smart of us to make a mistake now when we're heading into phase 2.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks, John. Yeah, Rob, I think you guys have done a great job. I mean, it's a niche market. I mean, Best Western has done it and they run cords, but they only had to use like 15-amp breakers. And I, being involved with the snowmobile industry, used to run out of the Best Western and run our radios for the snowcats and that. So I was there all the time and talking to the sledders, and that was one of the biggest problems. So the breakers were always popping. But for them to be able to plug in and dry their equipment and get in, have their sleds, no snow on them in the morning, and heat those trailers during the evening while they're in the hotel. Yeah, it makes huge sense. And they didn't get many toy haulers. They basically only had a lot of sled trailers, and they all took turns plugging in.
Yeah.
And because they didn't have enough power in there, and they still don't have enough power. But to be able to park your trailer and truck in a stall and just walk into the hotel and you come back in the morning and everything dry is going to be huge for you. I think that'll work really well.
Yeah, we think there's a good market there. We're unsure at this time, but we think there's a good market.
Okay, great, great. No, I think you guys have done a great job, both Rakesh and Karen and yourself. You guys did a fabulous job. Unfortunately, the fires kind of set you back this summer with and everybody. But hopefully next year we'll have a good year and forward. Now, Sarah, how do you want it? Like, you had some changes here. Are those changes included in this recommendation for council?
They aren't, just because it only came on Monday, so everything had already been published. So, Stephanie, we could go back a couple slides. So there's one condition that I would recommend that we update, so 5AV. So I would just scratch all this out and just change it so that it says that the use is permitted year round, January through December. And then there was a request to take out the 5AII by removing that 2-week stay limitation and just leave it. So I think that what that condition says is, it just says that there can be no long-term accommodations there.
Yeah.
So we would just be striking out that 2-week portion of that condition. Is there another one?
No, I think that was said we didn't. You worded it nicely with the, it's not primary residence. All these people, their primary residence is elsewhere, but I don't know if that's just confusing it as well. The short-term rental is really where the financial gain is. You know, you charge out weekly and you're making more than you charge out monthly. So, you know, in the pro forma, we have to have turnover. The 14-day is going to be implemented in the summer season. And, you know, it's like Sarah pointed out that you go to a provincial campsite and people scramble because they can only book for 2 weeks.
Yep.
But in the shoulder season, I'd be reluctant to have any short-term condition on that. In the winter season, we're looking at a different, it's an unknown.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, I did read the recommendation and you'll reword it for the council, Sarah? Is that how we're gonna do that? We're not gonna come back to this again?
Maybe for clarity, do we want to make an amendment on this? And what I'm hearing is that you want to remove any restrictions on the time use?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like, yep.
Right, so that's not in this permit we presented today. Based on your discussion, you want to further amend the temporary use permit to remove any restrictions in terms of the year stay.
Yeah, does that sound correct, Sarah?
It does, yeah, and so my understanding would be that we would want the recommendation to council to state that.
Right, so we'll just make an amendment to this one, subject to the conditions of the permit and further that it be amended to remove whatever you want to remove the.
The 12-month.
You could be really specific and say update 5AII and 5AV to remove the specific time limits.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, that's
we
great.
can word that. So maybe you can vote on that amendment, because
Okay.
technically you vote on the amendment,
Do we wanna,
back and vote on the amended resolution.
yeah, do we wanna read the amendment? Did Steffi get that written down?
I just added it to amend, update 5AII and 5A5. Right?
Yep.
To remove any restrictions on the time frame.
On the time frame? Does that sound okay?
It does, yeah, as long as we're clear that we're removing the definite, it'll still say long-term accommodations are not permitted. It's just a 2-week limit that would be removed. And 5AV, we would scratch that right out and it would just say, the use is permitted around January through December.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Correct.
Okay, we got that. Can I have a mover on the amendment? Deb, seconder John, all those in favor? Okay, you'll kind of have it re-wordsmith for council.
Yes.
That sounds good, Rob, and
Yeah, thank you very much. That's excellent. Appreciate it.
thank you. Okay, carried.
Want to then vote on the resolution as amended? You voted on the amendment. I know this is technical.
Okay.
Whatever you being on the resolution as amended with that.
Okay.
You've already moved and seconded that a while ago,
Okay, so we're gonna vote on the amendment,
the amending bylaw.
amending bylaw, which will be, we'll see at the next council meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, can I have a mover? Deb, John, second, okay, all in favor?
Okay.
That's that better?
Technically correct.
What's tough when you don't have the wording, right?
I know, because
I don't know how Colleen does it. Okay, moving right along, zoning, amendment file number 23-336. Dash bed, 102 Martin Street and 902 Riverside Avenue. Finn, Nicole, this is yours.
Through the chair.
Thank you.
So Sarah will go through a little formal presentation of this one, but before we do that, just wanted to mention that we have the owner online. Yeah, if there's any questions afterwards. And so for this proposal, if it's approved by council, we will need to create a new recreational vehicle park zone. That's a mouthful. And just so we have some history on that, we do have an RVP1 zone in our bylaw right now, but it's currently being amended for, don't want to get it wrong, Silver Sands. And we have an RVP2, and that's for Sycamore Sands. So those two are both reserved and we'll see those at council next week. So those are existing developments and they're site specific, and it probably wouldn't work for this new proposal. And so we do have a recommendation today. And it's talking about creating a new zone, but what we would like to propose is taking, creating a new zone to the committee of the whole, to see if that's the direction that council would like to go. I don't think there was anything else I wanted to add before we kind of go through what the actual proposal is.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. Sounds pretty straightforward. Okay, Sarah, you go ahead.
The chair. Next slide, please. So this is where the two subject properties are located. So they're right at the corner of Martin Street and Riverside Ave on the Sycamore Narrows. So it's within the commercial waterfront land use designation of the official community plan. And they're currently zoned C4 on the upland and W3 on the water side. Slide. So here's the proposal. So it's a 26 lot bare land strata that's proposed for recreational vehicles and park model trailers. There would also be associated marina replacement and upgrade, so an expansion of what's there. It would have 23 fingers. Next slide. Here's a easier to see layout of the bare land strata. So you can see access would be off of Riverside Avenue with a secondary access through Martin Street there. And then there's this whole amenity area proposed along the waterfront that ties in with the waterfront walkway. There's some pedestrian amenities sort of suggested in this concept, benches, lighting, that type of thing. Sorry, I just want to see if there was anything else I wanted to point out. Oh, I meant to put the parcel area on here. I'm very sorry. I missed that. It's much larger than what's actually required in our current RVP zone. Next slide. So here's the current C4 zone and our current RVP1, which is just our base zone. This is being updated and changed right now. So if you're interested, you can kind of look at it. So in terms of different regions, but from the RVP1, you can basically see that the proposed bare land strata is very much consistent with this existing zone. The only thing that it doesn't quite fit, but is very close, is the minimum parcel area. So they would need in the new zone a site-specific regulation just for them. To allow it to be 0.8 hectares. So each of those parcels is 0.4. So it's just a touch under minimum size. And then you can see like, so the minimum size for a strata parcel is 180 square meters. And these are around like 250. Some of them are a little bit smaller because of the layout and would be more suitable for a recreational vehicle as opposed to a park model trailer. I think there's only 5 sites that are a little smaller like that. The rest 21 are sized for a park model, and they are fairly large spaces, so there is better space there to accommodate other things that people like to have, like, you know, a patio or a screen room, you know, a storage shed to store their toys. Yeah, next slide. So in terms of any discussion that the community might want to have, these are sort of the key highlights out of the official community plan. These were included in the staff report, so you may be familiar with them. So real quick highlights, you know, the waterfront area supports things like marine related recreation, accommodation, food and beverage, multifamily residential, parks and recreation, and commercial uses that cater to the recreational market. And that's all in close proximity, means that whole area, not necessarily all of one parcel, for some clarity. And then the other key points would be a minimum 3-meter walkway, which is what they're showing on their concept. It would require a minimum 5-meter right of way to maintain the base for that walkway. And then there's additional guidelines around that to speak to pedestrian amenities, which they have shown on their concept. And then the other key component that's related to this is that a statement that the district will support private dock and marina development. So I believe the intention is that the marina would be associated with the strata parcels, and people would have the option of having their own moorage for their boats. And they may need a zoning amendment to the water, because that's W3, which I believe is strictly commercial. So they might need that to go to a W2.
Okay,
Orange.
okay, you carrying on?
Right, thank you. Sorry, there's a lot here. And so then in terms of the internal referrals, this has only been internal referrals so far. You know, we haven't necessarily prepped this to move forward yet to council, depending on the discussion today. So it would still need to be referred to external agencies, but we would typically get that done ahead of public hearings so that council has that information. So comments, you know, the building department didn't have any comments at that particular time, but they were researching park models in terms of code, that type of thing. Bylaw, they didn't have any concerns about it. They did note that the signage, the parking signage on Market Street needs replacing. Finance, they did go and kind of have a look at what current property taxes are there, what they could be if the parcels developed under the current C4 zone versus what they would be if it developed under the proposed RVP zone. So some interesting information there. I believe there's a whole spreadsheet that was included in the package. Fire, basically they're pretty happy with it. They just would like to see, you know, any landscaping that's done is fire smart. So fencing and maintaining a minimum 1.5-meter setback, particularly in the rear, because the concept shows a 1.2, but there's lots of room on the property. It's not like a 1.2 would be necessary to make that work. So 1.5 seems really easy to meet. And then engineering, they had just were commenting on in terms of what the district's 5-year capital plan is for necessary upgrades on Riverside in terms of upgrading and upsizing the servicing there to support the development that's already there and the type of zoning that's there, as well as the land use designation of your official community plan. So it sounds like, you know, they're basically trying to ramp up to support larger, higher density scale development in that area. Next slide. Oh, that's it for me. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, well, what I'll do is I'll read the recommendation. Recommending that the Planning and Development Committee recommend to the district to amend the zone of lot 6 and 7, district lot 452, KDYD plan 2547, more particular shown on Schedule A from 4C or C4 tourist accommodation resort to RVP X recreational vehicle park, recreational vehicle park X. Can I have a mover? Don, seconder, Deb? Okay, Todd, did you want to say anything?
Hi, no, I think it's pretty straightforward. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Deb, do you have anything?
Couple of questions, actually, on the bylaw comment about the signage, parking signage need to be replaced on Martin Street? What replaced with what, or?
I think they're just in poor condition, what's there.
Yeah, I didn't think there was any parking signs on Martin
No,
Street.
so what happened was if you go down like Wet Up Street and stuff, Deb, there's no parking along the street. Like so along our property lines along Martin Street, the district had no parking signs all along there.
Okay,
But because I owned both sides of the property on Martin Street, they just got removed because nobody was complaining and so people, as it is today, people are parking down on the street now and covering every inch I've got over there. So we'll have to redo it, repost it once the development's finished.
got it. I was thinking, I guess, east of Riverside. So this is west of Riverside you're talking about, because yeah, there's no street parking to speak of. So I guess my one question is that, you know, parking for this development is covered within the site there, because there's nothing on Riverside. You can't park on either side there, or
That's correct.
yeah. I love the waterfront walkway. So excited that we got a development permit happening that's actually going to do it this time. It's like, woo.
Okay, great. Anything else, Deb?
I'll think of something else, I'm sure, but that's.
John, you got anything?
No, I support the idea. I like it. Support densifying anything we can to bring more people into our town.
Great, okay. No, thanks, Todd. Really appreciate the development and hopefully we can get a speedy process here and get it to council here right away and move forward. I think it's a great opportunity for Sycamoose to, you know, become a little more lively and bring more people into town, and looks like a really nice development. And we look forward to passing it at council, so.
Well, I
Anybody
appreciate
else? Yeah. Kelly, you're good? Everybody else good? All right. May I have a mover? Deb, seconder John, all those in favor? Carried. Thanks, Todd.
Okay, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
You bet. Okay, moving right along. Development service update. Nicole, that's you.
Yep. I have a couple more slides left. That's always too small for me to see. Okay. This is the first file, right? Oh, yeah, okay. So just we're gonna run through the current applications, just a quick update. So at the top there, we have we just talked about that one. So this is the development permit, but they need to rezone first. So this one's on hold. We'll see how the rest of the proposal goes before we pick this file back up. For 534 Main Street, we were waiting for the final determination from the province on contamination, but it sounds like we got confirmation yesterday that the site is not contaminated. So that's a plus for them. And the owner is working through some of the traffic impact study recommendations that were presented to them. For 1006 McLean McPherson, so still on hold. They're also in the circle with the province for environmental contamination and waiting on that. I have been following up with the province here and there with all of these applications to kind of see where they're at. So that's just waiting. For the micro suite development, same thing, we're waiting on the final determination. So no progress on that one. We just talked about 100 Archibald. We have already presented 515 Dogwood to the PDC, and it's going to go to the regular council meeting next week. They need a resolution from council to apply to the ALC to subdivide. For 918 Riverside, so they have a report submitted to the province for Section 11 Water Sustainability Act approval. And I followed up with them. I might have heard back from the consultant, but no update on that. 1436 Silver Sands Road is just on hold. They applied for the development variance permit before the water course development permit and the building permit, just to see if the variance would be approved, and it was. So I followed up with the owner to find out when those applications would be coming in, and they are still thinking about it. The zoning we just talked about. down a bit, Steffi. This one. Yeah. And then the TUP replacement, just talked about that. And then the next slide, I think.
850 shoes were.
Yeah, so yeah, we have 3 new applications at the bottom here. So we don't have a lot of details on them. They've just come in and hopefully we'll bring those to the PDC December 6th. That's our next meeting. That's it.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
I feel pretty good about that list. Yeah.
Any questions? Deborah, John, you guys are good?
Any updates on the Dairy Queen?
Go for it.
Yes, for sure. I did happen to speak with Amar a couple weeks ago. They were waiting on some structural stuff on the trusses specifically, but they have got that sorted and they're still moving ahead. It was a bit of a pause for some structural stuff, but they've got that sorted and Amar's moving ahead on that. Yeah.
Okay,
And the daycare as well. They're doing a bunch of work over there if you could take a drive by.
Yeah.
The side note.
okay. Nicole, I just comment on contaminated sites. I think, one of the problems the province is trying, and also the feds are trying to take away all the red tape for developments, to get more developments happening for housing. And one of the biggest stalls of anything is the contaminated site problem. And they should really, I don't know, maybe UBCM should take a look at it, but I mean, that property's been tied up for almost 2 years now. It's actually, 2 years since they put the development permit in, and waiting 2 years for a contaminated site is unbelievable. When the property was clean, when Mountain Park was done, it was, it was completely clean, and phase 1 and 2 were done in the environment, and it was clean then, but to make them go through 2 years of waiting for a contaminated site approval is terrible, so that's something just to think about. If they want to speed up, it's red tape. That's the biggest red tape right there, so. So I just thought I'd ask that. And then on 534, are they going to, have we heard, Sarah, are they going to be putting any fuel tanks in? Because that development permit is probably expired by now. Are they planning on putting any fuel tanks in soon?
So I did talk to the agent that's taken over, that handles the construction part. He did comment that they actually ordered a much smaller tank than what they originally had for there. I think it's in, but I'm not sure. I'd have to double check, because I know that there were some implications with the traffic impact assessment for internal site flow that may affect where the located oriented. So they did reach out yesterday after they got their determination. I haven't followed up with them yet, so I'll have to see kind of where they're at in terms of that.
Okay, yep, I was just curious. Okay, that's it. Anybody else have any more questions? All right. Well, we'll move, recommend that the Planning Development Committee meeting of November 15th, 2023 be adjourned at, let's see, 10:08. Deb, seconder, John, carried. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Appreciate it. Nicole.